On the show this week, we have Gajanan Nabar, CEO and MD of Praj Industries Limited.
Currently, about 20-25% of business comes from, for our emerging business, comes from exports or international markets. And we want to take it up to about 40-45% in the next few years.
And in news, Ben Martin posts his first PGA Tour victory in Las Vegas and a superb 5th place finish for SSP Chaurasia in the Hong Kong Open.
So Gajanan, welcome to TeeTime.
Hey Shruti.
Indeed
nice
amazing.
To meet you.
Likewise, indeed amazing to have you on the show here today. So let's start off with Praj Industries now. What brings you to Praj really?
In one word, excitement. I think we are in a space where we could make a lot of social impact.
Right.
Whether it is biofuels or whether it is wastewater treatment or even animal health and nutrition.
Yeah.
So these are the spaces where I think genuinely as a company we could make a big impact. Trying our bit.
So is the next growth story right here in India for businessmen really, considering you also spent a lot of time in US and you came back to do business back here?
Yes.
Let's go over the India story as far as water consumption is concerned, because I believe that the industrial water consumption is likely to perk up by about 57 odd%.
Yes.
So what is the story right there in India now?
The story is big, Chaiti. You know, thing is, a lot of people don't know about this.
Right.
First, India and China. With China, India is the second largest consumer of water. Along with China, we have 56% of the global consumption of water, which is pretty large. Okay.
Right.
Second, we are probably much water deprived. So against the Asian average, we are way low. We are even lower than China in terms of availability of fresh water is concerned. Third, if you look at, there is an index which you could measure productivity of water.
Right.
So dollar converted by using water, and that is at 3.5 per cubic meter of water. Now you look at China, it's about 3.8, okay, which is not phenomenally great, but it's pretty much better. You look at US, it's 10. You look at Japan, it is $120 per cubic meter. So there is a lot you could do to improve the productivity. So that's one area. Third, I don't think we are pricing the water rightly. The pricing of water is pretty much too low, and that's what reflects into how we treat water.
Correct.
And only about 27% of water is being treated.
Right.
So I think there are lots of opportunities. I think what we need is a very comprehensive plan towards how you securitize water. I think we talk a lot about energy.
Right.
Not as much attention for water.
Right.
And I think over time, and I'm not saying next 10 years, but very quickly, because the overall water consumption in India is going to double in the next 5 years, about 7 years.
All right, on that note, I'll tee off and we continue talking.
Sure.
So now, Mr. Nabar, is the industry too hard-pressed at this point of time to reduce water consumption?
Yes, and multiple reasons, right? I think the commercial reasons also are there, apart from the environmental reasons, that you can't let go not treated water in a pool of freshwater reservoir. But I think commercially also, I mean, for example, let me give you an example from a beer industry, which would use close to 8 liters of water per liter of beer. I think they have got that down to 2.5 liters.
Right.
And they want to go down further.
Right.
So some of these things obviously add to their commercial, I would say, competitive advantage.
Right.
And in addition to that, of course, it's an environment sustainable, right? I mean, environment friendly. It's more sustainable practice. And I think if you look at it, India is water stressed, and industry is contributing an improvement of the overall,
Right.
the demography of India. I think this is going to obviously help the cause.
Now, India is really a country where 1/5 of the world generics are made. How much of a demand are you seeing from that market really for clean consumption of water?
I think, as you see more capex formation, as you see industry getting more opened up, I think right now there's a lot of FDA inspection and
Right.
a lot of vigilance is happening. And I think it's for overall good of the industry. And as you become, world scale and you become world class, obviously this increases the potential to use high purity water, process systems and all that which Praj high purity system offers today. So I think it's all about increase in the capex formation on ground.
Right.
We see some early signs, but it's probably too early to say whether how the trend looks like. But we are very optimistic about it.
Now, you just spoke about global standards and of course increased demand as well. Now you are present in 60 countries, if I'm not mistaken, as of right now.
We've done business in 60 countries.
Okay, and
Yes.
what kind of expansion plans then are you looking at? Because obviously there is an additional demand that you're seeing. So do you
Yeah.
have any expansion plans in the back of that fact?
No, I think that's a very good question and very logically so.
Right.
So as one, and I think sometimes we give less to the software than the hardware.
Right.
We have the confidence of doing business in many countries, So we have built it over the last 30
Right.
years. Praj was one company which went to Colombia, and now we build all the biofuels plant in Colombia, 100% of them.
Right.
We have done lots of plants and business in multiple countries in Southeast Asia. We recently concluded a large EPC project in Sierra Leone, thankfully before the Ebola outbreak. And we
yeah.
kind of move out of that. So I think that confidence is a big thing. It's in confidence in our ability, confidence
Right.
in understanding the customers in different countries. It also gives us some insights into how easy or difficult it is to do business in certain geographies.
Sure.
We also have obviously our channel partners. We have some customer linkages, so which we are going to use it in our new emerging businesses, as you rightly said. And that's going to, obviously we have seen some signs. So we have currently about 20-25% of business comes from, for our emerging business,
Right.
comes from exports or international
Sure.
markets. And we want to take it up to about 40-45% in the next few years.
Mr. Nabar, your company has really made a statement saying that you all are not looking at any kind of capital infusion at this point of time. So on the back of that, what do your capital expenditure plans look like going forward?
Sure. So what we said is we're not going to make very large capital infusion.
Sure.
We already have done substantial capital infusion in the last couple of years
Right.
to bring this emerging new businesses up to a level,
Right.
which was obviously required.
Right.
But what now we see is we have built enough capacity and capabilities. And I think now is the time where we could start sweating that
Correct.
going forward. So we would about 20-25 crores for, I would say, a little bit of upgradation, debottlenecking
Right.
kind of capex. Apart from that, of course, we are working on what we call it a very, very interesting project. And that's on second generation biofuels, which I would say would address an issue which is probably a worldwide issue, food versus fuel.
Right.
As the biofuels are made from either grain or sugary substances,
Right.
increase in the consumption of biofuels could put pressure on, the grain prices. And so there could be always a food versus fuel debate. And what we are doing currently is we are working on biomass-based biofuels.
Correct.
So that would substantially solve this issue and address this issue worldwide.
Your company is looking forward to build a second generation ethanol plant by FY15, which is this fiscal year itself. Now, with that, how much of a reduced capex and opex expenditure are you likely to see?
No, so the capex and opex over the last 5 years, and I'm not talking only Praj.
Right.
I'm talking about there are a couple of other worldwide players who are in second generation biofuels. And we have seen a steady decline in the required capex,
Right.
as well as plants and solutions are becoming more efficient, so OpEx
Right.
also is getting reduced.
Right.
So what we believe is that when we benchmark Praj's technology with anybody else in the world, we are pretty much up there. You know, we have a technology which can be commercialized.
Right.
A lot would depend. So the whole second generation story is about arbitrage of the feedstock cost. Compared to, you take it to the oil, or you also compare with the first generation biofuels.
Right.
We believe as the technology progresses, as it becomes more mature, I think the OpEx will go down as well as the CapEx. What we have done here, very interestingly, and probably that's the differentiator that Praj brings to the table, is we have a large base of existing customers who are into first generation biofuels. We are doing a bolt-on kind of solutions for them,
Right.
where they could run their first generation biofuels plants and also have a line which is running on the second generation.
Correct.
So you use a lot of existing equipments, you probably use utilities of the existing site, and also have a second generation biofuels.
And what about the brewing business now? Likely to contribute a little more in the next 2 to 3 years or so? What's your estimate like?
Yes, we are very confident of that. What is happening is this business, I would say, has turned a page.
Right.
We were very focused on domestic brewery business,
Right.
the brewery plants. Over the last few years, we built capabilities of supplying internationally. And as a result of that, we got a couple of large contracts, orders from large brewers like Heineken and Saab Miller, and we're
Right.
executing them. One of them is already executed to the satisfaction of the customer. Other one is kind of towards the end of this year would get executed, completed. And that, I believe, is opening up a large window of opportunity for Praj. Because now we are playing into international scene for brewery business.
Right.
So which I would say 5 years ago, we were not doing it to that extent. So yeah, we are very confident that that business would certainly grow.
So what does your current order pipeline really look like, Mr. Nabar?
So I think last quarter we mentioned a pipeline of about 800 plus crores.
Right.
We are seeing significant traction in our emerging business, and also on biofuel side, both in or I would say ethanol side, both on domestic and
Right.
international. International business for ethanol has always been, I would say, high beta business. It is linked to multiple factors, and you could, it's oil prices, it could be feedstock cost, it could be the finished product price, multiple factors, including government will and mandates and things like that. So I think what we are trying to do over the last few months is trying to focus on getting the revenue dollars from our existing base of customers. So as I mentioned, we have 600 plus references, more than 300 customers worldwide. And we are trying to see how we could help them to be more efficient, have better wastewater technologies provided to them, less power and steam consumption, and more environmentally friendly, and also can increase their outputs in cases. So which is of course taking us back to the customers and also giving us a little more surety of business, which is, I would say, kind of a base load business from these customers.
So while a rather interesting conversation discussing business on the course is stirring up with Mr. Nabar, we're going to take a break and we are going to find out how Mr. Nabar is on and off the course, of course, in his life. Thanks for staying with us on TeeTime, and welcome back. We're still in conversation with Praj Industries and discussing numbers as far as they are concerned, and of course finding out how Mr. Gajanan Nabar is on and off the course. Now, Mr. Nabar, will the new businesses that have come into Praj now drive the future growth of this company?
I would say both. Our core business is also poised for a good amount of growth.
Right.
And we have clear vectors of how they will drive.
Right.
As I already mentioned to you, internationalization of brewery business is part of our existing or core business,
Sure.
which is driving the growth. Our second generation biofuels, which is probably 3 to 5 years kind of
Sure.
horizon, but I would say as a medium term growth would certainly come from that technology driven business.
Right.
And then what we have started with this whole modification and retrofits business would also obviously contribute a big deal.
Yeah.
At the same time, emerging business, what we said is over the next couple of years would constitute 50% of Praj. Today it constitutes about 30% of Praj. It's growing rapidly. It's in very interesting segments. We are addressing pharma, we are addressing chemicals to a certain extent, food and biotech,
Right.
oil and gas. And all these segments are going to see substantial growth. So yes, I would say it's a combination of both core. And then we obviously have what we call it incubation business, which is, I would say, 5 years and beyond. You know, we are feeling comfortable about how we look at the complete pipeline of products and business opportunities over the next 5 to 7 years.
Now, recently it was pegged that Praj Industries would be getting an uptick of about 30 to 40% thereabouts in terms of turnover. Do you think you have that much capacity? I mean, these are industry reports giving those kind of targets and outlooks for your company.
And we have been very open in sharing this with our investors and media as well.
Right.
What I mentioned over the last few years, we've been investing. We have been investing in capacity and capability building. Yes, we have some capacity which can get filled up as the order book improves. Last year or so, or probably last couple of years, the order book has been little running behind the invoicing.
Okay.
We want to move it to a situation where order book is running or leading invoicing.
Right.
And we surely have obviously the capacity, but I think we also believe with 1,200 strong people, we also have the capability of doing this.
So how are you really planning to leverage the company's international presence per se to drive the business organically here as well?
We have done that successfully in our core business.
Right.
We have done that for our ethanol business.
You're planning to do that for your new businesses as well
Absolutely
now.
right. And some of the learnings from our past experiences obviously coming in handy. We are also planning the resource base accordingly. We are putting in resources where they are required.
Right.
Of course, we are not going, I would say shotgun shooting. We are not going everywhere.
Right.
Because that would probably, too little running after quite a lot. So we are actually getting very focused. We have kind of prioritized the countries where we feel there is ease of doing business. Of course, our size of opportunities that we are looking at for different business verticals, and variety of those. And I think we have a game plan.
You have been nurturing entrepreneurship quite a bit within your organization, within your employees. Now, it's very interesting to see how employees are taught to nurture entrepreneurship, because it's a bit ironical and they don't really go hand in hand. So what's the idea really, and how do you do it?
I think, Chaiti, to a large extent, this is all about the vision, one, and understanding and engagement to that vision of every employee. I think, you could have large terms, but it's actually very simple. If people are engaged, people know where they're going as the company, and, personally, what is their contribution to that.
Right.
I think people feel much more motivated to do things.
Right.
And, the things like bureaucracy comes only when they're really not clear of what they're doing and, how they're contributing. If you clear that and you know exactly what the path forward for the company, where you are making the impact within the company and the whole company is making on the environment around it, I think it's, easier said than done. It's probably simplistic. But for a company like ours, it's always a balance. We have moved from an entrepreneurial setup to a larger corporate company. So the balance between systems and processes, how much you encourage entrepreneurship, how much you get yourself bound by the processes and systems. But if I would feel that if your objectives are very clear, I think this kind of dichotomy doesn't exist. You know exactly where you're driving.
Now, you've taken on to the greens after a really, really long time, isn't it? Yeah. Keeping busy with work and not getting time to pursue golf, because you're good. I saw your shots and they're fine. When do you plan to get back into the game, really?
I don't know. I'm enjoying what I'm doing currently.
Yeah.
Been busy with traveling with customers or to meet customers. But golf is my passion. Whenever I get time, I would get back to it.
But it's also a game where you can transact a lot of business, really, right? So you're in a way in a boardroom when you're on the fairway.
You could. And in few geographies, yes. For example, Thailand.
Yeah.
We have lots of our customers who play golf. And we're kind of trying to get together with them with
Correct.
a round of golf. In India is not as much, specifically our customers.
Right.
Yes, a few do, but we are not really come across as it's a huge uptake on people playing golf and doing business on the course.
But-
But if it makes sense, we would.
But is there a lot of golfing culture within the organization in the top rung really? How many of your directors
Not really.
play? How many of
Not
the
really.
other employees play it?
Not. I mean, there are few people who play.
Right.
There are few of my colleagues play. They play much better than what I do.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't call it a golfing company. Or rather, people who are really passionate about a lot of golf.
Interesting.
Personally, I do like golf, but
Right.
whatever makes sense for business, right?
And who are your players that you really look up to and whose game you really enjoy?
I always, and it's a very stereotype answer, I'm sure. Tiger Woods, of course, but now that he's not playing, Rory is my next.
Yeah, he's
Rory,
young
yeah.
and I think he's the
Yeah,
next
probably
big story.
he's showing the shades of Tiger in younger days.
Lovely. On that note, let's finish our game. Come.
Sure.
Good one though. Nice. So on a winding note, let's discuss what leadership really entails, what leadership really means to you, and how people management of such a large organization could be a challenge within itself.
Yeah, leadership is, I would say, very contextual.
Right.
Leadership also obviously situational, and it actually never goes with hierarchy. It goes with whoever in position to take charge
Right.
and take people
Right.
along to a common goal.
Right.
What an organization you need to do is, apart from having a lot of formal leaders, how could we inculcate a culture of informal leadership? People who take charge. Anything untowards happens, people take charge of the situation. Any opportunity people see, they bring it back and take charge of that. So I think leadership is all about that.
Right.
I think it's also very top down. It's also how you treat your people will, in turn, they would turn
End up treating you.
end up treating their people, and it goes on. So I think it's very essential that what kind of behavior you demonstrate at a very senior levels,
Right.
whether you walk the talk. And Chaiti, again, as I said earlier, there are a lot of simple things, sounding simple, but they're not simple actually when you go to practice.
Absolutely.
And we've been lucky to have a lot of people in Praj who've been with the company for a long time. They've built this business with their sweat and blood over time, last 30 years. And as we expand, we go geographical expansion, we go into different vertical segments, different industry profiles. We are adding more in terms of the capacity and the capability of the newer skill sets.
Right.
And so there is also influx of newer people. So I think how this whole thing blends and the overall leadership takes this whole company forward is what an interesting proposition we have currently.
So leave us with your final thoughts on this show. If there was this one message you had to give to the viewers as far as entrepreneurship or leadership is concerned, or empowering people, as you rightly said, concerned, what would that one takeaway be from you?
I think it's about taking charge.
Right.
It's about looking at opportunity and bringing it home. Because I think there are a lot of people who could strategically think. There are very few who could actually strategically think and bring it home.
Bring it home as well.
And yes, bring it home as well. And I think more of such leaders you have in your company, I'm sure it's a recipe for success.
So creating leaders organically within the organization.
Absolutely.
Lovely thought to end with. Thank you so much,
Thank you so
Gajanan,
much.
for joining me
Nice
on the
playing
show.
with you.
It was a pleasure having you with us today. With that, it's a wrap on this episode of Tea Time with me, Chaiti Narula. I will see you next week again with another interesting guest from a completely different sector altogether. Until then, enjoy the flight of a good drive and may the sport be with you.